Today I'm going to be adjusting and re-greasing the headstock bearings on this 2016 Triumph Speed Triple. I'm lucky enough to have the use of this motorcycle jack. You don't need one of these to do this job. I've done it in the past without. You can just use a rear wheel stand and a standard trolley jack underneath the engine to raise the front of the bike. So the first thing I'm going to do is release the handlebar clamp. You'll need a 6mm Allen key. Now we're just going to bring the handlebars forward. You can take them off, but I don't see the point. Again, with your 6mm Allen key, we're just going to release the pressure on the two upper yoke pinch bolts. So with a 38mm socket, we're now going to release the upper yoke centre nut. It's a good idea to put something over the nut to stop damaging it. Now we're going to try and remove the upper yoke. Before you start bashing it with hammers, etc., just try and lift it off. It might come. So it's quite loose on one side. If you are going to hit it, use a fibre mallet. Quite often it doesn't need a lot of persuading. can see a bungee is quite handy. You now have your lock-in nut and your adjuster nut. You will then need this special tool to get it off. I'll put a link in the description as to where I bought this from. I can't remember what it was called. It was a British company. I think it was only about £20. On he goes. You then have a washer, which has a lock-in key on it. I believe they recommend replacing this. I've taken this off in the past and I've never done it before. I can't see why. Of course, this is up to you. Okay, then you have your adjuster. So the first one was a lock-in nut. This is an adjusting nut. If you're only going to adjust your headstock, you won't need to take this off. What you would do at this point, you would have taken the lock-in nut off, you would have taken the washer off, then you would loosen this adjuster nut. Then it recommends you tighten it to 40 Newton meters. I will double check these settings for you. Then you would loosen it again and tighten it to 15 Newton meters. Put your washer back on, put your lock-in nut back on, and holding the adjuster in place, you would then tighten it to 40 Newton meters. So you'd tighten the lock-in nut to 40 Newton meters. If you're going to go this far, you might as well take it all off and re-grease the bearing. There we go. It's kind of pushed through this plastic, I guess is a waterproof cap. Okay, I'm now going to hire the bike. I'm going to use the ratchet to take the lift up. You can use a drill to do this, but I want to do it really slowly, just in case anything should move suddenly out of place. So you can see there that the suspension has dropped slightly to give me access to the bottom bearings. I'm just going to go a little bit more. There we go, so I've got myself a little bit more room. Now the intervals for the adjustment and the re-grease. For the adjustment, I think it's once a year or every 6,000 miles. and the re-grease is 12,000 miles every 2 years. But like I said, if you're going to go to the bother of taking all this off, you might as well just re-grease it every year. Okay, let's go back to the top. Okay, so we just need to take this off. It's easier with a magnet. So let's just carefully take this out. I'll try to take it out slowly so you can see it. There we go. So there's your top cap, I suppose you'd call that. And there is your bearing race. Now you have your bearings. There we go. Like I said, this looks in very good condition. It has been off. It has been re-greased. And I'd prefer to do this every year than every 2 years or 3 years. You may then catch any problems. So the underside is a little bit more difficult to get to. Like I said, I don't really want to take it all apart. I could go up a little bit further possibly, which I might well do, just to give myself a little bit more access. Now I notice as I'm taking that up slightly, I'm putting a little bit of tension on the brake hoses, so I'm just going to lower it just a little bit more. That should do it. So all I'm going to try and do here is just feel around. Just moving the bearing around. As you can see, it looks good. Can't see any problems or issues with it. You can have a little feel under there. Everything feels reasonably fine. I'm just going to get a rag in there to take most of the grease away and then put new in. There's your other bearing race. This all looks pretty good. Okay, so with nice clean hands, you're just going to get a nice big blob of grease. Smear it around the bearing race. And the bearings. Like I say, that should do it. Just trying to push that out of the way. And we'll just put some more on the race. Just going to go around the other side. So that's the underside done. And now for the top side. So again, now we're just feeling for anything rough. Everything feels fine. Just get that old grease out. So before I put the bearing back in, I'm just going to bring the bike back into position. Like I say, you can achieve this just with a car jack underneath the engine. When you're taking it back together, just go underneath and have a look, just to make sure everything's working out. Nothing's fallen or jammed. Sometimes helps, if I remember rightly last time, just to pull, there we go, pull it back up. Again, checking underneath. Okay, so at this point now I'm going to just put the bearing back in. So I've inspected the bearing. I'm not going to take a lot of this grease off because it's quite clean anyway. Just going to add a little bit more. Everything's moving nicely. Just pushing the front wheel backwards, which is allowing me a little bit of access there, look. And then you've got your bearing race and seal. So again, this is all pretty clean. I don't think it matters if this is lubricated, it just helps to seal any dust and dirt out. And again, as I push the wheel, everything kind of sits into place there. Now for our dust seal and the adjuster nut. So I'm just going to pull these together using the nut. So I can feel a little bit of tension there. It's quite tight. I'm not going to torque it up or tighten it up too much. I'm now going to lower the bike onto its own weight. Once we've got to this stage, we're now going to tighten this adjuster nut up. Remember, the tightening sequence is 40 Newton meters. So holding the front wheel between your legs is a good idea. There we are, so there's your 40 Newton meters. So now with the wheel off the floor, I'm just going to turn slightly. There we go. I'm just making sure nothing's binding, that everything's moving freely. I haven't finished the tightening procedure yet. So after you've tightened to 40 Newton meters, you slacken it off again. So next step now is to retighten to 15 Newton meters. It's not a lot. And now spacer goes back on. So next thing is to tighten up the locking nut. You need to hold the adjuster nut in place with a C-spanner. I have done this in the past without using the C-spanner and it didn't move. The only reason I've put a rag here is to stop the C-spanner for scratching the fork. Okay, so we can now start reassembly. So now on with the centre yoke nut. This is torqued to 90 Newton meters. So the next stage now is to get the handlebars back on. Remember, I have got to do the upper yoke pinch bolts as well, but this is just trying to get this out of the way. So the top yoke pinch bolts are 20 Newton meters. And finally we're going to tighten the upper handlebar clamps to 26 Newton meters. There we go, that is the headstock bearings greased and adjusted. Remember, if you don't do this, particularly on this model, I believe it's quite susceptible to the nuts coming loose. You will then feel vague steering and quite often clunkiness when you're trying to brake. If you like that video, please subscribe and press like.